Look, forced labor occurs in any country where there are a lot of migrant workers and there are employers who can take advantage of them to try and make more money, even though it damages the workers. It happens in Malaysia, it happens in Indonesia, it happens in Thailand, and it happens in the United States. It doesn't matter where it happens. There are bad people out there who are going to take advantage of disadvantaged people. And now it's happening in the US. And part of the reason why there has been such an uptick of violations of child labor law in the US is because there's so many more migrants to the US right now. And there's child migrants. And when the US was separating children from parents and putting them in homes with either distant relatives or no relatives, the children didn't have any money. They didn't have a way to live. So what do? They will go work, and they will work illegally, and people will take advantage of that. And that's why you have seen such an uptick in child labor violations in the US since 2018. There's no mystery as to why this is occurring. Hopefully, the US government is going to get on top of this now and put in higher penalties, have greater enforcement. Right now, the violation for violating child labor laws in the US is $15,138 per child. That's got to go up, and I think it will go up. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have underage workers making bags of Lucky Charms and Cheerios.
Yeah,
and auto parts and everything else.
Everything.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, 70% increase in child labor violations since 2018. What do some of these violations look like? Are we talking children or teenagers? I mean, what are the ages we're talking about here?
Well, typically here in the U.S., these are kids who are working late at night after school. So they're 14, 15 years old, right? They're still
reporting was saying some 10, 12-year-olds.
It could be that young. I would say predominantly
Reuters story I saw. Yeah.
For the work that gets done in the U.S., you need somebody a little bit older. So it's typically, look, it's people Max's age, right? And they go to work after school, and they're working in these factories that are very dangerous late at night because they need money. And it might be they need money to send home. It might be they need money to pay the people they're living with. It might be that they need money to eat. And there should be better social services in the U.S., but they're not. These kids should not be just allowed to live with anybody. But it seems to be the case that they are more and more, and people are taking advantage of it. And they're not looking, for the driver's license. They're not checking Social Security. They're not asking for a birth certificate, and that's going to have to stop.
Yeah, there was this New York Times investigation said most of the kids are minors from Central America. Many are working for a company called Heathside, and they make chewy granola bars, bags of Lucky Charms, Cheetos. But I also saw that there were some other ones doing auto parts and all kinds of things.
Suppliers linked to Hyundai.
Yeah.
Now, it comes back to the previous point. Is this a supply chain issue, or do you agree, like you did with the previous recycled shoes, the onus is on the company to trace back every single link of the supply chain in whatever country?
Well, look, there's two issues. The first issue is you go after the employer. So you go after who's taking advantage of migrant workers. It could be child labor. It could be basically forced labor, that happens in Malaysia and Indonesia quite often, where you take the passport away from the migrant worker so they can't leave. You force the migrant worker to pay agent fees, so they're basically working for nothing, and the company gets the kickback from the agent. So there's all different ways you could have forced labor or child labor. The first thing is the government needs to crack down on the employer themselves. The second thing is you need to have companies auditing their supply chain, because companies are saying, well, we don't have any forced labor or child labor in our supply chain. Well, you better audit it if you're going to say it. And so you're seeing that more and more happening from companies in the U.S. that are sourcing in Malaysia. Let's hope that companies that are sourcing in the U.S., like if foreign companies like Hyundai, that they're going to check on it. So it's government has a responsibility, but the person who's sourcing has a responsibility too.
And on that vein, good news for Sime Darby Plantation. U.S. Customs authorities have lifted a 2-year import ban on palm oil products made by Sime Darby Plantation after determining the goods were no longer being produced with forced labor.
Well, and this is an example of if you have that ESG mindset, take care of the problem before it becomes a problem. It is not a shock that there is forced labor where there are migrant workers. Sime Darby Plantation, it had forced labor all over its plantations. The U.S. government then says, we are not going to allow the export of products from Sime Darby Plantation into the U.S. When that happens, Sime Darby says, okay, we got a problem. Now we've got to fix it. So they spend tens of millions of dollars. They put all of the processes.
20 million.
Yeah, 20 million. Well, that's just that one number is 20 million.
To compensate the current and former migrant workers.
And then they have to change all of their policies and processes, and they have their lost sales. So it costs them tens of millions of dollars to address this. Now they have done the right thing, and now they have no more forced labor, right? So you let the migrant workers keep their passports. You don't rely on agents where the migrant worker has to do a kickback to the agent who's doing a kickback to the company, which means the migrant worker has to stay for years before they make any money. So they've cleaned all of that up. They've done the right thing. And so we need more companies to do the right thing, and to do the right thing before the government comes in and makes it a real problem for